Killian Rose stood in his metal fabrication shop, watching sparks dance across steel as Zoe Cruz welded a support beam. The smell of hot metal filled the air, familiar and honest. Sweat beaded on Zoe's forehead, despite the October chill seeping through the shop's walls. At 42, Killian had built this business from nothing, earning every callus on his hands and every client through careful work and fair dealing. The afternoon light slanted through dust motes, casting geometric shadows across workbenches that held the tools of his trade. Hammers worn smooth by decades of use. Measuring devices calibrated to perfection. Everything in its place, everything serving a purpose. His phone buzzed against his work shirt. A text from Maris, working late again. Don't wait up. The third time this week. Killian stared at the message, noting the time stamp. 4:23 p.m. She usually texted closer to 5 when normal people started thinking about heading home. Starting earlier meant she'd already made plans that didn't include her family. You okay, brother? Zoe's voice cut through his thoughts. Killian looked up to find his business partner, studying him with concern. They'd known each other since high school, had built this shop together from shared dream, and borrowed money. Zoe could read Killian's moods better than anyone. Just thinking about Maris. The question hung between them like smoke. Zoe had noticed things too, the way Maris barely acknowledged him anymore when she picked up Finn, the forced smiles, the distance that had grown between the rows like a cancer. Killian pocketed the phone and walked to his truck. The drive home took 15 minutes through Spokane's quiet neighborhoods, past houses where other families were probably sitting down to dinner together. Normal families. Families where mothers didn't send cryptic texts about working late when their offices closed at 5. He pulled into the driveway of the house. He'd built himself, every board measured twice, every nail driven true. The cedar siding he'd installed by hand still looked solid after 8 years. The front porch where Maris used to sit with her coffee on Saturday mornings, reading novels and commenting on the neighbors' gardens. When had she stopped doing that? Inside, 10-year-old Finn sat at the kitchen table, homework spread before him like a battle plan. Math worksheets, a science project about the water cycle, and a book report on Bridge to Terabithia. The boy looked up with eyes too knowing for his age, dark eyes like his mother's, but with a steadiness that reminded Killian of his own father. Mom's not home yet, Finn said, then immediately returned his attention to long division. The casualness of the statement hit Killian harder than any accusation could have. His son was already adjusting to a mother who wasn't there. I know. Killian ruffled his son's dark hair. Hungry. Already ate cereal. Finn turned a page in his math book. Dad. Yeah. Mom seems different lately. Killian's hand stilled on Finn's shoulder. Different how? Finn shrugged, but his face stayed serious. She smiles more when you're not around. But when you are around, she looks angry even when she's not saying anything angry. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. People have bad days, Killian said. Finish your homework. Later, after Finn went to bed, Killian sat in his workshop behind the house. The space smelled like sawdust and machine oil, comforting scents that spoke of productivity and purpose. He ran his fingers along a piece of oak he'd been shaping into a jewelry box for Maris's birthday. 3 months of careful work. Each curve planned, each joint precise. He'd sketched the design during lunch breaks, refined it over weekends, selected the wood from a specialty supplier in Coeur d'Alene. The box was meant to hold the necklaces and earrings he'd given her over 15 years of marriage. Small treasures that marked anniversaries, birthdays, moments when words hadn't been enough to express what he felt. She used to wear those pieces often, touching them absently during conversations, as if they were talismans connecting her to him. When had she stopped wearing them? When had she stopped touching the wedding ring he'd saved 6 months to buy? When had she stopped caring about things he made with his hands? The front door opened at 10:30, its distinctive creak announcing Maris's return. She'd been promising to let him fix that hinge for 2 years. Now he wondered if she liked the warning it provided. Killian set down his sandpaper and walked into the kitchen. Maris stood at the counter, her auburn hair perfect despite her supposed long day at the accounting firm. She wore the blue dress he'd complimented months ago, before everything started feeling wrong. The fabric still hugged her curves the way it had when she'd modeled it for him. twirling in their bedroom like a young woman instead of a 39-year-old mother carrying the weight of accumulated disappointments. "How was work?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Fine." She didn't look at him as she opened the refrigerator, her movements sharp and efficient. "Busy." The refrigerator hummed in the silence between them. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once and fell quiet. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal marriage. Except nothing about this felt normal anymore. "The Henderson Project keeping you late." A pause. Small but there. Her hand stilled on the refrigerator door handle for just a heartbeat too long. "Yes. Lots of paperwork." Killian nodded slowly. He'd called Henderson Construction that morning to discuss a bid on their new warehouse. Tom Henderson had mentioned they'd finished their books 2 weeks ago, praised the woman who'd done the work quickly and efficiently. No mention of any ongoing project requiring late nights. "I'm tired," Maris said, closing the refrigerator without taking anything out. "Going to bed." She moved toward him, and for a moment he thought she might pause, might look into his eyes the way she used to when searching for reassurance or connection. Instead, she kissed his cheek, quick and cold, then disappeared upstairs. Her footsteps on the wooden floor above sounded purposeful, as if she had somewhere important to be even in their own bedroom. Killian sat in the dark kitchen, listening to water run through pipes, drawers opening and closing above. Outside, wind moved through the trees he'd planted when they first moved here. Back when Maris called him "my builder" and traced the muscles in his forearms while he sketched plans for their future. Now she looked at those same hands like they embarrassed her. "Dad, Mom always smiles when she texts someone named Eli," Finn said the next morning over pancakes that Killian's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Eli? Yeah, she gets this look, like when she used to look at you." The words hit like a cold blade between ribs. Killian forced himself to chew, swallow. "You sure about that name?" Finn nodded. "I saw it yesterday when she left her phone on the counter. The message said, 'Can't wait to see you.' Then she came back and saw me looking and got mad." "Mad how?" She grabbed the phone real fast and said I shouldn't read other people's messages. But she wasn't really mad. More like scared mad. Killian set down his fork. His son was 10 years old and could read people better than most adults. "What else have you noticed?" Finn looked down at his plate. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Killian reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. "I don't know, buddy. But whatever happens, you and me are solid. Always." That evening, Killian watched Maris from the living room. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, supposedly working on client files. But every few minutes, she picked up her phone, tilted it away from view, typed quickly, then smiled. Finn was right. It was the smile she used to give Killian when he came home from work. Warm, secret, full of promise that she'd never smiled at client emails. Killian made mental notes. The phone had a new case black instead of her usual purple. She'd started locking it, something she'd never done in 15 years of marriage. And those yoga classes. "How's the yoga going?" he asked during a commercial break. Maris's fingers paused over her phone. "Good. Really good. Lisa's a great instructor." "Which studio again?" "Downtown, near the river." Killian nodded. He'd drive past the 3 yoga studios downtown tomorrow. See which cars were parked outside during Maris's supposed class times. 2 days later, Maris needed to stay late again. "Emergency client meeting," she said, grabbing her purse and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She adjusted her lipstick a shade darker than she usually wore and smoothed her skirt. "Take my car if you need to pick up Finn. Mine has more gas." After she left in his truck, Killian looked at her silver sedan sitting in the driveway like an accusation. The car he'd helped her pick out 3 years ago, researching safety ratings and reliability scores because he wanted his family protected. She'd kissed him in the dealership parking lot after signing the papers, called him my practical hero, while the salesman looked on with professional envy. He needed lumber for a client project anyway. A custom stair railing for the Peterson house, something that would require careful measurements and precise cuts. Might as well use her car and save the gas money. The drive to the hardware store took 20 minutes through familiar streets. When he started the engine, The navigation system lit up with recent destinations, a feature Maris never used, because she claimed technology confused her. She'd always been proud of her sense of direction, her ability to navigate by landmarks and intuition rather than electronic assistance. But someone had been using the GPS. The list made his stomach drop like a stone through cold water. Home. The accounting office. Finn's school. The grocery store. And then, 1247 Cedar Lake Road. Visited 6 times in the past 2 weeks. Always on days she'd worked late or gone to yoga. Always on days when she'd come home with that distracted satisfaction he'd mistaken for professional accomplishment. Killian knew that area. Expensive cabins were Spokane's wealthy kept weekend places, tucked away among tall pines and artificial privacy. He'd done metalwork for 3 of them over the years, custom railings, decorative gates, fire screens that cost more than most people made in a month. The kind of work that paid well, but left him feeling like he was building luxury for people who'd never appreciate the craftsmanship. At AT, the hardware store, he bought lumber and made small talk with Pete Morrison, the owner, about business and the weather. Normal conversations about normal things. But his mind stayed on that address, turning it over like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere good. "You okay, Killian?" Pete asked while loading 2x4s into the sedan. "You seem distracted. Just thinking about a project. Anything I can help with?" "No. Thanks, though." After picking up Finn from school, Killian made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. "Want to see some nice houses?" he asked his son. "Sure." Finn looked up from his handheld game, always ready for an adventure that didn't involve homework. The road wound through tall pines and expensive privacy, past gates that promised seclusion and mailboxes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Killian slowed as they passed 1247, his pulse accelerating despite his efforts to stay calm. A modern cabin with huge windows and clean lines, the kind of architecture that appeared in magazines about luxury retreats. A luxury car sat in the driveway, BMW, dark blue, with license plates that meant nothing to him but that he memorized anyway. The cabin looked like a place where successful people went to feel even more successful, where normal rules didn't apply because normal people couldn't afford to be there. "Nice place," Finn said, pressing his face to the window. "Who lives there?" "Just looking, buddy." Killian memorized details, the house, number burned into a piece of expensive stonework, the landscaping that screamed professional maintenance, the security cameras mounted discreetly under the eaves. Someone had money. Someone had secrets worth protecting. That night, after Maris came home claiming exhaustion from her emergency meeting, Killian lay awake listening to her sleep. She'd showered immediately when she got home, something she rarely did after work. Changed clothes completely, even her undergarments. Brushed her teeth twice, gargled with mouthwash, and applied hand cream with the methodical precision of someone erasing evidence. She slept deeply now, the sleep of someone whose conscience had been temporarily satisfied. But her phone lay on the nightstand, charging and occasionally lighting up with notifications she thought he couldn't see. In the blue glow of the screen, her face looked younger, almost innocent. Like the woman he'd married 15 years ago, who'd promised to build a life with him that would last forever. The next morning, he drove back to the cabin alone. The BMW was gone, but something had changed. The front door, which had been tightly closed the day before, now stood slightly open. Not an invitation, but not completely secure either. Killian parked down the road and walked back through the pine trees, stepping carefully on ground covered with fallen needles that muffled his footsteps. The cabin's windows showed no movement inside, no signs of current occupation. But the open door suggested someone had left recently. Possibly in a hurry, he approached carefully, listening for sounds that might indicate he wasn't alone. Nothing but wind through the trees and the distant hum of traffic on the main road. The cabin felt empty in the way buildings do when their occupants have departed, but their presence still lingers in the air. The interior smelled like expensive wine and perfume. Maris's perfume, the French brand she discovered at Nordstrom last Christmas, and now wore like armor against her ordinary life. The scent hung in the air like an accusation, mixing with other odors that spoke of recent intimacy and careful planning. Two glasses sat on the coffee table, both showing the telltale rings of red wine. Both had lipstick marks, but only one in Maris's distinctive shade, the darker color she'd started wearing recently. The other glass bore no makeup traces, suggesting a man who'd been confident enough to drink without concern for evidence. In the kitchen, expensive bottles lined a granite counter that probably cost more than Killian's monthly mortgage payment. But it was what lay beside the bottles that made his blood turn cold. A silk scarf, blue with small flowers. The one he bought her last Christmas, selecting it carefully from 3 different department stores because he wanted to find something that matched her eyes exactly. And beside it, as if someone had been interrupted while exchanging contact information, a business card. Eli Grieve, contractor. Quality remodels, fair prices. Killian stared at the card, memory rushing back like floodwater. He remembered Eli, clearly now tall, confident, probably 35, with a sleeve tattoo that attracted attention and expensive tools that suggested either exceptional skill or exceptional prices. Maybe both. Eli had done their kitchen remodel last year, a project that had stretched over 6 weeks because Maris kept requesting changes and refinements. She'd insisted on hiring him despite quotes from other contractors, claiming his work looked more artistic and showed real vision. She'd found reasons to be home every day during the project, making coffee for the crew, wearing her good clothes to supervise the work, and asking detailed questions about techniques and materials that had never interested her before. Killian had been pleased by her engagement with the project, had seen it as evidence that she was investing emotionally in their home. Now he understood she'd been investing in something else entirely. He pocketed the business card and left the scarf where it lay. If she missed it, she'd have to explain why it mattered. If she didn't mention it, he'd know she was planning to retrieve it later, which would tell him even more about the scope of her deception. The next evening, Killian called Zoe. "I need a favor." They met at the shop after hours. Zoe brought his cousin Aurelia, a data analyst who did freelance security consulting. She was 26, sharp-eyed, and good with technology Killian barely understood. "You want to clone your wife's phone," Aurelia said. "Not a question. I need to know what's happening." "This is messy territory, cousin," Zoe warned, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too many marriages collapse under the pressure of secrets and lies. "You sure you want to go down this road? Once you start pulling threads, the whole thing might unravel." Killian thought about Finn asking if they were getting divorced, his 10-year-old voice carrying a resignation that no child should ever have to develop. He thought about the scarf in another man's cabin, about 15 years of marriage being slowly dismantled by carefully planned deceptions. He thought about coming home to an empty house while his wife built a life with someone else using lies as building materials. "I'm already down it." Aurelia explained the process with the clinical precision of someone who'd done this before. Simple enough if you knew what you were doing and had access to the right tools. A small device that would copy Maris's messages and calls to a duplicate phone, creating a digital mirror that would show him exactly what his wife was hiding. "Takes about 30 seconds when she's not looking," she said, holding up what looked like an ordinary phone charger. "You'll get everything: texts, emails, call logs, even deleted messages if they're still in temporary storage. But cousin, once you see what's in there, you can't unsee it. Some things are better left unknown." "How much?" "500. And cousin, I need you to understand what you're asking for. This isn't just about confirming an affair. This is about crossing a line that changes how you see the world. Once you know for certain what someone you love is capable of, it changes something inside you that can't be changed back." Killian looked at his hands, calloused from honest work, scarred from tools and materials that never lied about their nature. "The line's already been crossed. I'm just trying to figure out where it leads." That weekend, Maris left her phone charging in the bedroom while she showered, something she'd started doing more frequently. Privacy disguised as practicality. Finn was at a friend's house for a sleepover, planning to spend Saturday building a fort in someone else's backyard while his parents' marriage continued its quiet disintegration. Killian had 30 seconds, maybe less if she hurried through her shower routine. The device Aurelia gave him looked innocent enough, just another charger in a world full of electronic necessities. He plugged it into Maris's phone, Watch the screen flash through displays too fast to follow. Digital archaeology happening at computer speed. 20 seconds. 25. He heard the shower turn off upstairs, that he unplugged the device and slipped it into his pocket just as water began draining through the pipes above. Done. 2 hours later, while Maris ran errands that would probably take her past Cedar Lake Road, the duplicate phone in his workshop began receiving copies of every message sent to her number. The device sat on his workbench like a window into a world he'd never wanted to see, displaying secrets that would reshape everything he thought he knew about his life. The first few messages were harmless. Work emails about client deadlines. Texts from friends about weekend plans. A reminder about Finn's dentist appointment that she'd actually put in her calendar, proving she could still function as a mother even while destroying their family. Then, at 8:47 p.m., while Killian sat 10 feet away watching a movie with his son, "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You drive me crazy, beautiful." From Eli Grieve. Maris's response, sent from upstairs while Killian heard her moving around the bedroom. "You too. Can't wait until Tuesday. Same place. Always. I love how you taste like honey and danger." Killian set the phone down carefully, as if sudden movements might make the words somehow more real. He walked to his workbench, picked up a steel rod meant for a decorative gate project, and bit it into a pretzel with his bare hands. The metal groaned under pressure before yielding completely, transforming from straight lines into twisted chaos. He read more messages, scrolling through weeks of digital intimacy between his wife and another man. Sweet words that cut like razor wire. Planning sessions for meetings that happened while he thought she was working late. Lies coordinated with the precision of military operations, each deception building on the last to create an elaborate architecture of betrayal. And then, from 3 days ago, a message that made his blood crystallize in his veins. "It has to look like a break-in. I need to be free. I can't wait forever." Eli's response came fast, as if he'd been waiting for her to finally speak the words they'd both been thinking. "I know someone who can handle it. Make it look random. You'll be a grieving widow by Christmas. Maris, what about Finn? Kids adjust. He'll be better off without watching his parents hate each other." Killian read the exchange 3 times, then 3 more, each reading making the words feel more like a physical blow. His wife wasn't just betraying their marriage. She was planning to have him murdered. Not divorced, which would mean splitting assets and custody arrangements and explanations to friends and family. Murdered, which would leave her free to start fresh with insurance money and sympathy and a 10-year-old boy who'd never understand why his father had suddenly disappeared from his life. He sat at his workshop until dawn, reading every message, understanding the scope of what he was facing. They weren't just destroying his marriage. They were planning to destroy him completely, to erase him from the world as efficiently as deleting an unwanted text message. Then he made a list of everything he needed to do to survive. Monday morning, Killian called his insurance company. "I need to cancel my life insurance policy. Any particular reason, Mr. Rowe? Financial changes. Just cancel it." The agent explained procedures, waiting periods, paperwork. Killian listened with half his attention. The other half planned to AT the shop. He pulled Zoe aside. "Remember what I told you about Maris? The affair. It's worse. They're planning something. I need you to know that if anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Zoe's face went stone serious. "What kind of something?" "The kind that makes widows rich." Killian explained what he'd found in the messages. Zoe's hands slowly clenched into fists as he listened. "We call the police. Right now. With what? Screenshots of text messages? They'd lawyer up and claim someone hacked the phones. I need more." "Like what?" "Like them trying to do it." That evening, Killian installed hidden cameras in his house. Small ones, wireless, that recorded to cloud storage Zoe could access. He put them in places Maris would never think to look inside light fixtures, behind picture frames, in the workshop. That he also started carrying a small digital recorder. Not for evidence in court, necessarily, but for Finn. Someday his son would want to know the truth about his mother. The messages between Maris and Eli continued. They were getting impatient. Eli's contact wanted to move soon, before winter made break-ins less believable. Soon, Maris texted. Maybe this week. He's been staying late at the shop. Perfect opportunity. Killian forwarded copies of everything to a secure email account Aurelia had set up. He also wrote a detailed letter explaining everything he discovered, sealed it in an envelope, and gave it to Zoe. If something happens to me, give this to the police and my lawyer. And take care of Finn. Nothing's going to happen to you, brother. Maybe not, but I've been wrong about a lot of things lately. The call came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Killian was reviewing blueprints when his phone buzzed. Dad, Finn's voice, barely a whisper. What's wrong? Aren't you supposed to be in school? I came home sick. Mom doesn't know I'm here. Dad, you need to get out. Now. Killian's blood turned cold. Why? Mom and Eli are in the basement. I heard them talking about tonight. They said he'll come through the back door like always, and it has to look right. Where are you now? Hiding in my closet. Dad, they said they're doing it tonight. When you come home. Killian was already moving, grabbing his keys. Stay hidden. Don't come out until I call you back. If you hear anything weird, call 911. The drive home took 12 minutes. Every red light felt like an hour. Killian parked 2 blocks away and approached through the neighbor's yard, staying low behind the fence he'd helped build 3 summers ago. The house looked normal. Maris's car in the driveway. No sign of the BMW. Killian slipped through the gate into his backyard. The workshop door was unlocked, unusual, but not alarming. He always locked it. Inside, his tools hung in perfect order. Nothing seemed wrong, but something felt off. The air moved differently, like someone had been waiting that he headed for the house. The back door was slightly open, which was normal. Maris always left it unlocked when she was home. Killian pushed the door open and stepped into his kitchen. The baseball bat caught him behind the left ear. He went down hard, his vision exploding into white stars. Through the ringing in his head, he heard a voice. Make sure he's out cold. We don't want him awake for this part. Then the world went black. Killian woke up in the hospital with his head feeling like it had been split with an axe. Bright lights, antiseptic smell, and Maris sitting beside the bed, holding his hand and crying. Thank God you're awake, she said. I was so scared. A police officer stood near the window, notebook ready. Sergeant Morrison, someone Killian knew from the neighborhood. What happened? Killian's voice came out rough. Someone broke into your house, Morrison said. Your wife found you unconscious in the kitchen. Looks like you surprised them. I don't remember. That's normal with head injuries, the doctor said, checking Killian's pupils with a small flashlight. You have a concussion. Your memory of the incident might never come back. Maris squeezed his hand. The important thing is you're alive. They could have killed you. Did they take anything? Morrison consulted his notes. Your wife says some tools are missing from your workshop. Maybe a few $100s worth. Probably drug addicts looking for things to sell. Killian nodded carefully. Moving his head made the room spin. When can I go home? Tomorrow, if your symptoms don't get worse. After the doctor and police officer left, Maris leaned close. I was so scared I'd lost you, she whispered. Well, I found you lying there. She was good. If Killian hadn't read her text messages, he'd believe every word. Where's Finn? At my sister's house. I didn't want him to see you like this. An hour later, Finn arrived with Maris's sister Carol. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide with worry. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, buddy. Just a headache. When Carol and Maris went to get coffee, Finn moved closer to the bed. His voice dropped to a whisper. I saw Eli's tattoo, Dad. The skull with roses. It was him in the ski mask. Killian's heart pounded, but he kept his face neutral. You saw the person who hit me? I watched from upstairs when they carried you out. The sleeve of his jacket was rolled up. Same tattoo from when he worked on our kitchen. Smart, brave kid. Did you tell your mom what you saw? Finn shook his head. Something told me not to. Good instincts. Don't tell anyone else either. Not yet. Why? Because sometimes grown-ups do bad things, and we need to be careful who we trust. That night, alone in the hospital bed, Killian stared at the ceiling and planned. They thought they'd beaten him. Thought he was broken and helpless. They were wrong. The next morning, Killian came home to a house full of concerned neighbors and friends. Casseroles filled the refrigerator. Someone had repaired the back door and installed a new deadbolt. We can't be too careful, Maris said, showing him the new security measures. I won't feel safe until they catch whoever did this. Killian nodded and touched the bandage on his head. I just wish I could remember something useful. For the next week, he played the part perfectly, confused about the attack, grateful for Maris's care, worried about random criminals in their neighborhood. But when no one was watching, he moved carefully through his house, checking the hidden cameras. Most had been found and destroyed, but the one in the workshop light fixture had survived, and it showed everything. Eli Grieve entering through the workshop, waiting behind the door. The attack itself, sudden and brutal. And afterward, Eli searching through Killian's tools, taking a few items to support the robbery story. The timestamp showed Maris arriving home 10 minutes after the attack. Plenty of time to park down the street and walk back to discover her unconscious husband at the shop. Zoe helped Killian download the video files to multiple secure locations. This is evidence of attempted murder, Zoe said. We call the police now. Not yet. I'm supposed to have memory problems, remember? If I suddenly recover and produce video evidence, they'll know I was setting them up. So what's your plan? Let them think they won. See what they do next. Over the following days, Killian established a pattern. Slow recovery. Memories still foggy. Nervous about being alone. He started taking naps in the afternoon, sometimes falling asleep in his chair while watching TV. Maris began staying later at work again. The yoga classes resumed, and the text messages between her and Eli continued, now focused on how long they should wait before the next phase of their relationship. He's so different since the attack, Maris texted. Jumpier, weaker, almost like a different person. Perfect, Eli replied. Broken men don't fight back. The warning came from an unexpected source. Killian was replacing spark plugs in his truck when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She's already asked about a cremation clause. Watch your son. He read the message 3 times before it sank in. Someone was warning him. Someone who knew what Maris was planning. That evening, he waited until Maris went to bed, then called the unknown number from his workshop phone. Hello. A woman's voice, nervous. This is Killian Rowe. You sent me a message. A long pause. I shouldn't have done that. But you did. Why? Because I can't stand watching this anymore. Who is this? Cleo Martinez. I work with Maris. Killian remembered her. Maris's best friend from the accounting firm. They'd been to several company picnics together. What cremation clause? She came to me asking about insurance policies. Want to know if there were any restrictions on cremation versus burial. Said she was asking for a client, but Cleo's voice trailed off. But what? But she had your policy number written on her hand. And she asked if life insurance pays out the same whether someone dies from an accident or an illness. Killian's grip tightened on the phone. What else? She's been different lately. Excited, but trying to hide it. Like someone who's planning a surprise party. Except. Another pause. Except this doesn't feel like anything good. Are you willing to testify to what you just told me? I can't. She's my friend. And I don't have any real proof of anything. Then why warn me? Because you seem like a good man. And because I don't want to watch Finn lose his father. The line went dead. Killian sat in the dark workshop, thinking. Cleo's warning confirmed what he already suspected. Maris wasn't done. The attack was just the beginning. She was planning something bigger, something final. 3 days later, Killian made his move. I want to try to move forward, he told Maris over breakfast. This whole thing has made me realize how fragile life is. How we shouldn't waste time being angry at each other. Maris looked up from her coffee. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we should try harder. Go to counseling. Work on us. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Disappointment flickered across her face before the caring wife expression returned. That's wonderful, Killian. I'd like that. What about tonight? We could have dinner together. Really talk. Finn can stay at my mom's. Tonight, unless you have plans. No plans. She smiled, but her eyes stayed calculating. That sounds perfect. Great. I'll pick up something nice from the market. We can cook together like we used to. After Maris left for work, Killian called Zoe. Tonight's the night. I need you monitoring the cameras from your place. If this goes wrong, it won't go wrong. If it does, make sure Finn knows I try to do the right thing. Killian spent the day preparing. He bought expensive wine and ingredients for Maris's favorite pasta dish. He also visited Aurelia, who gave him a small vial of liquid and very specific instructions. 2 drops in a full glass of wine, she said. Tasteless, odorless. He'll be unconscious in 15 minutes, out cold for 2 hours. No permanent damage. You're sure? I'm sure. But cousin, are you sure about this? Once you cross this line, they crossed it first. That evening, Killian set the table with their good china and lit candles. When Maris came home, she'd changed into the red dress he'd bought her for their anniversary. You look beautiful, he said, and meant it. She was still beautiful, even if everything else about her had turned poisonous. Thank you. She seemed nervous, checking her phone more often than usual. Everything okay? Just work stuff? I'll turn it off. But she didn't. And 20 minutes later, when she thought he wasn't looking, she typed a quick message. Killian's duplicate phone, hidden in his pocket, buzzed with the copy. He wants to talk. Tonight. I think he suspects something. Eli's response came immediately. I'll be there in an hour. Keep him calm. Perfect. Killian finished preparing the pasta while Maris opened the wine. She poured 2 glasses, handing him the one on the right. Always the one on the right. He'd noticed that pattern weeks ago. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To truth, Killian replied. They ate in candlelight, making small talk about Finn's school and plans for the weekend. Normal conversation between a married couple trying to reconnect. But Killian watched Maris's eyes, saw her checking the time on her phone every few minutes. This is nice, she said. We should do this more often. We should. Killian refilled their wine glasses, making sure she got the one he'd prepared. I've been thinking about a lot of things since the attack. What kind of things? About trust. About marriage. About what happens when people lie to each other. Maris's hand paused halfway to her wine glass. That's specific, is it? Killian smiled and took a sip from his own glass. I guess almost dying makes you philosophical. She lifted her glass and drank deeply. You're not going to die, Killian. Not for a long time. How can you be sure? Because... She stopped, seeming to realize the weight of the question. Because you're strong. You're a survivor. Like when someone hits me in the head with a baseball bat. Her eyes flickered. That was random. Bad luck. Was it? The doorbell rang. Maris's face went pale. Expecting someone? Killian asked. No. Maybe it's your mother. Mom's at her book club. Killian stood up slowly. I'll get it. No, I'll. But Killian was already walking to the front door. Through the peephole, he saw Eli Grieve standing on the porch, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Killian opened the door. Eli, what a surprise. Hey, Killian, I heard about the break-in. Thought I'd check on you folks. That's thoughtful. Come in. Eli stepped inside, his eyes immediately finding Maris in the dining room. She was still sitting at the table, but her wine glass was empty and her face looked flushed. Maris didn't mention you were coming by, Killian said, closing the door and turning the deadbolt. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. Eli's voice sounded slightly off. Confused. I was in the neighborhood, and he swayed on his feet, caught himself against the wall. You okay? Killian asked. You look a little pale. I feel. Eli blinked hard, trying to focus. I feel weird. Maybe you should sit down. Killian guided him to the living room couch. Eli collapsed heavily, his coordination clearly failing. What's happening? Maris stood up from the table, panic creeping into her voice. I think your boyfriend just learned what it feels like to be drugged, Killian said calmly. Eli tried to stand but fell back onto the couch. His eyes rolled back and his head lolled to one side. Maris. Killian turned to face his wife. We need to talk. I don't know what you think you know, Maris said, but her voice shook. Killian walked to his workshop and returned with a small device. He plugged it into the living room TV, and the screen filled with security camera footage. I know you've been planning to kill me, he said. I know about the affair. I know about the messages. And I know Eli was the one who attacked me. The footage showed Eli entering the workshop, hiding behind the door, striking Killian down. It showed Maris arriving afterward, checking to make sure he was unconscious before calling 911. This is fake, Maris said desperately. You made this up. Killian pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Maris's voice, clear and unmistakable. It has to look like a break-in. I need to be free. I can't wait forever. Fake 2. Maris looked at Eli's unconscious form, then back at Killian. Something in her expression shifted. The mask of the caring wife fell away completely. You never gave me anything, she screamed. You never had any ambition. You were content to build other people's dreams while ours rotted away. Our dreams. I wanted more than this. She gestured wildly at the house around them. More than metal and sweat and small-town nothing. You gave up on being great. You chose safety over success. I chose family over fantasy. Family. She laughed bitterly. You think this is family? You think watching you settle for mediocrity year after year is what I wanted. What did you want, Maris? I wanted a man who fought for something bigger, who took risks, who didn't measure every board twice before cutting it once. Killian stared at the woman he'd married, seeing clearly for the first time in years. You wanted someone else's life. Yes. And when I found someone who could give it to me, you became the thing standing in my way. So you decided to have me killed. You weren't supposed to survive the first time. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Eli hit you too gently. Said he didn't want to kill you by accident, but that was the whole point. And Finn? What was the plan for our son? Finn would have adjusted. Kids are resilient, and he deserves a father who actually accomplishes something with his life. Killian felt something cold and final settle in his chest. You're right about one thing. I do need to accomplish something. He walked to his laptop and opened several browser windows. Insurance companies, the police department, the FBI field office, his lawyer's secure email. What are you doing? Finishing what you started. Killian uploaded the video files, audio recordings, and detailed documentation to every site simultaneously. Then he picked up his phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Killian Rowe at 1247 Oak Street. I need police and paramedics. I've just exposed a conspiracy to commit murder, and one of the conspirators is unconscious in my living room. 2 hours later, Killian's house was full of police officers, paramedics, and investigators. Eli had been revived and arrested, though he remained groggy and confused. Mara sat in the back of a patrol car, no longer crying or pleading, just staring straight ahead with empty eyes. Sergeant Morrison approached Killian on the front porch. This is the most elaborate domestic case I've ever seen. The evidence you collected, it's overwhelming. Will it stick? Oh, it'll stick. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud. Your wife and her boyfriend are looking at serious prison time. Good. Can I ask why you didn't come to us sooner? Killian looked at the patrol car where Maris sat. Because I needed to be sure, and because I needed them to expose themselves completely. You took a hell of a risk. I had a son to protect. Speaking of which, Killian needed to call his mother and explain why Finn wouldn't be coming home tonight. Or tomorrow. This was going to take time to sort out. 3 days later, after the lawyers and investigators and social workers had finished their initial work, Killian sat in his workshop with Finn. His son had taken the news better than expected, but 10-year-olds shouldn't have to be that resilient. Are you okay, Dad? I will be. Are you? Finn considered the question seriously. I'm sad about Mom, but I'm not surprised. Does that make me bad? It makes you smart. What happens now? Killian looked around the workshop where he'd built so many things with his hands. Honest work. Solid work. Work that would outlast the people who'd tried to destroy him. Now we start over. New house. New life. Just you and me. Will you forgive Mom someday? The question hung in the air between them. Killian thought about forgiveness, about mercy, about the kind of man he wanted his son to see him as. No, he said finally. I don't forgive, and I don't forget, but I do finish what other people start. 6 months later, after Maris and Eli had been convicted and sentenced, Killian sold the house and bought land outside town. He built a new home with his own hands, every board measured carefully, every nail driven true on the day they moved in. Finn found him in a new workshop, planning project for clients who valued honest work. Dad, yeah, buddy, why didn't you let them win, even when it was easier? Killian set down his pencil and looked at his son. Because I don't forget, and I don't forgive. I finish what they start. He pulled out the jewelry box he'd been making for Maris's birthday, the one he'd never finished. With careful precision, He fed into the wood chipper behind the workshop, watching 15 years of marriage disappear into sawdust. Then he started planning something new.